Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to a video. So today I have another Squad SDK tutorial video for you guys. And so in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to create your own custom faction and also how to set up your faction setups and also how to set up your roles for your custom faction. So that's a handful, so it's three things that we'll be doing. The first thing we'll go over how to set up the faction and then the faction setups and then the roles. Now this video might be a little bit in the long side, so I'm gonna still try to keep the video as short as I can. I did do everything beforehand, or I set up everything beforehand, so I'll just go over what I did and then show you guys exactly what to do yourself. Now, I did have a few problems before actually making this video. This has actually been like 2 weeks already, where I was struggling. Whenever I click play, after I set up my faction, the SDK would keep crashing. But I think I managed to fix everything and everything is working now just fine. Yeah, hopefully you guys don't get the same issue that I did. Yeah, with that said, let's get to it. So, the first thing that we'll do is factions. So, okay, before we go do that, if you're in your main content folder of your mod, you should have a settings folder. And then in your settings folder, as you can see, I have a factions, faction setup, and then a roles folder. Now, you want to first create a factions folder if you don't have one already. But hopefully, well, most of you shouldn't have one already. But then just right click, new folder, and then name it factions, exactly how I did mine. So once you've done that, you want to open your factions folder, and then as you see, I have a data asset here and then a data table. Now I'm going to show you guys now in a second how to create them. So the first one is going to be this data asset. So you want to right click, miscellaneous data asset, and you want to search for faction. Faction. So you want to click on this first one here. So once you've done that, you click select, and then it will create the data asset file for you, and then you want to name it how I did it here, but instead of the TM and the SNDF, okay, so the TM is going to be your short name for your mod. So as you can see, my mod, for instance, is named tutorial mod. So I put it there TM. You can even, if you want to take your, this is just to identify across your entire mod that this is yours, because if you edit certain stuff, other faction stuff from the default game will pop up in certain places, so that this also makes it possible, so it's easier to search for your things if you need to search for them. So the TM, make that whatever your mod name is, the short name of your mod, and then underscore faction underscore the name of whatever you're gonna call your faction. So mine is SANDF because it is the South African Defense Force, or South African National Defense Force, SANDF. So that's why mine is named that. And so next up we'll make the data table. So this is named the same as the other one, or not, or it's not entirely named the same, but the first thing here, the TM underscore, is the same as the previous one. So you want to do the same thing. So the TM name, make that the short name for your mod underscore faction table. So let me quickly show you guys how you create this one. So this one is going to be miscellaneous again, data table, and then you want to search for faction entry, and then you want to click the first one and click OK, and then I'm gonna cancel because I have mine already. And so that's what you basically have to do. And so once you've done that, I already have both open, so you want to come to this first, we want to go into the faction table first. So once you have it open, as you can see, I have my one faction here. So this faction table will be used if you for instance, I have one faction here, but I can always just go click on this plus icon, and now I'm gonna start making a second faction. So depending on if you are gonna just have one custom one faction, that's gonna be your own custom one, and then for the other side, you're just gonna choose a random faction for your map. So let's say you have your faction set up or your map set up, and then you just want your custom faction and then another faction that's default in the squad SDK. Then you don't need to have a second faction here. But depending on how many factions you want, you can just add them up in this data table. Now, once you've okay, by default, you guys shouldn't have a faction, so you want to click on the plus icon. And once you've done that, you want to make the ID exactly the same as you named it here. Or at least just have the SANDF or whatever the short name for your faction is called. Because this row name is very important. This needs to be the same as what you called it here at the end. Otherwise, you might have some problems. So, once you've done that, or once you've created a faction, make sure here on the right by row name, name it whatever your faction's short name is. And then once you've done that, in this short name, you put it the same. And then display name is going to be the name that's going to be displayed on the spawn screen, if I'm not correct, or if I'm correct. And then you can also, under commander requirements, this is just something that shows up, I think, a description when you're a commander or what you need to have. And then you have game mode sounds, and then there's a bunch of other stuff here that you can set up for your faction. So there's a lot of stuff that I'll probably not go through in this video. You guys can just go through on your own time. But most of these that I just expanded are all sounds. So these are most likely sounds for like objective 1, and then lose sounds, and whenever you join that specific team, it plays a sound or whatever. So this is what all of these are here. So let me just minimize them. But like I said, you guys can go through these things here. Okay, so deployables, or this rally point mesh, they did change the deployables and how deployables work in the new version of the SDK, but I'll go over that maybe in a future tutorial. But for now, unless you have your own rally point model, you would set it here, and then you would also set the specific biome. So I just have mine on desert, but there's a bunch of other options there. This is also where you select the full size, or the texture, or the image, texture basically, for your faction. So obviously I haven't changed this to to the South African faction that I'm making, because obviously they have this should be the South African flag, for instance, not the US one, but I'll change that whenever. But this is where you change those things, and you can also change the UI banner when you are on the spawn screen. I'll show you guys that in a minute, but most of you might know this already. And then UI grouping strategies, I'm not exactly sure what this does. Oh, okay, so these are basically the categories for the different roles. So like, as you can see here, the squad roles, and then there's fire support roles, specialist roles. Now, by default, you guys might not have some of these stuff set. So what you can do is, I can quickly show you guys. So you want to quickly, I luckily have another content browser here on my right, but if you don't know how to create a second content browser, you want to come over here to Window, and then you want to come down to, I think it is content browser, and then just select the second one, and I just docked mine here on the right. So once you have it open here, you want to go to the main content folder of the SDK, and then go into the settings folder, and then go to the factions folder, and then you want to open you can basically open any one of these, but if you're gonna base your faction on another faction, I would suggest like maybe choosing one of these depending on what faction you're gonna base your faction on, and then just customize it to your needs then after that. But obviously we're copying the US faction, so you want to open the faction USA, and then in here you guys will see, oh wait, I'm opening the wrong thing, wait, faction stable, sorry. Okay, so in here, as you see, these are most of the factions by default in Squad, I think. So the first one is the US one, so you want to click on that, and then you can just go down here and see what they have set for the US faction, and then just copy it and paste it in here in your factions table. So I think that's gonna do it for the factions table. Next we'll move on to the factions or your actual faction, or this is the faction file for the actual faction. Okay, so I'm just opening the US one again, because by default, as far as I know, if I'm correct, most of these stuff won't be set. So what you basically do is just go to the faction USA, see what they have set here, and then do the same or change different things. Now, one important thing that you need to do is in here, you guys will see I have a theater of operations. Now, by default, I don't think this is set. So just click on the plus icon, and then just set the theater of operation, or where this faction that you're making is based on or based off of, and then just select that. And then also alliance, you can choose either blue for or red for or independent. I just chose independent, and then under here by primary data, under data table, this is where you want to select your faction table that we just created, and then under that you'll see row name, and in here you want to actually select your faction that's in your faction table. I actually don't have it open, but yeah, so that's why it's important to keep this row name the same as what it should be in here. Okay, so after you've done that, these priority stuff here you don't really need to touch. One thing you can maybe turn on is just apply recursively if it's not on, and then chunk ID, I put it mine to 2143. But you guys can change this to whatever you want. This is just a chunk number that whenever you compile your mod, it basically puts everything in one chunk. But I'm not gonna go over and explain what it exactly means, but once you've done that, you basically have set up your faction. So that's basically all to it for actually creating your faction. So the next thing that we'll go on to is the faction setups. So this is where you're basically gonna the faction setups, if I'm not correct. Let me just quickly read here. Give me 1 second. I'm just looking at the squad devs actually made a official document page to show you also how to set up all of these things, but I'll put it in the video description if you guys also want to go look at it, because this is what I'm basing my tutorials off of. But I know most people can't really go or do stuff from a documentation, because it's easier for them to watch a video instead of having to go through like a documentation page. But besides that, the faction setups. Let me just open it. Okay, so first off, go back to your settings folder. I know I'm going back and forth, back and forth. Hopefully I don't confuse myself. But so once you're back in your settings folder, your main settings folder, you want to create a new folder called faction setups and name it exactly how I named mine. And then once you go in it, make another folder called whatever your faction is named. So usually it's the short name of your faction. You don't usually name it the full name of the actual faction. So that's why mine is SANDF. Remember, this needs to be exactly the same as you named it in the faction table. And then once you go into this folder, as you see, we have a faction setup table, and then we have a combined arms army data asset. So this is where you basically create different groups of that faction, because each faction will have a air division for like Air Force, and then you get Navy, and then you get combined arms. That's like a general like division that can basically do everything. And then let me show you a example. So you want to go into the factions. I'm just opening it here, and then as you can see here, for instance, for the US faction that's default in squad as an air assault 101 airborne division, and then they have an air assault 504 infantry. So that's the infantry version of the Air Force One. And then you have armored. This is basically, I'm guessing, all the tanks. And then combined arms are just general infantry units. And then you have light infantry. And then you have mechanized first cavalry. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't go through all of these, but I'm just giving you guys an example. So usually, unless you want to make different divisions, you'll usually just have one. So I just made mine a combined arms, the general army for my faction. So to make these two files, again, you want to go to miscellaneous and then data table, and then in this one you want to search faction, and then you want to click this setup, this first one, and then you click OK, and it will create it. And then again, you want to name it faction setup table underscore whatever your faction name is. And then for the data asset, you want to right click here. Oops, miscellaneous data asset, faction setup, and you want to click. You want to select this one, and then once you've created it, name it your faction name underscore combined arms underscore army, or the combined arms underscore army. You can actually put anything here, or you can put anything after your faction name. But if you want to follow exactly how I did it, you can do that the same. But just except for the SNDF, put that, replace that with your faction's name. So after you've done that, we're gonna quickly open both of these. So the first one we'll go in is the faction setup table. Now, as you can see, I already have made a few here, but I haven't actually created the data assets for the different divisions. I just basically wanted to set up the first one just to get everything set up and working. So for instance, for my faction, I have a combined arms. This is the general army, and then I have an air force division, and then I have a navy division and a military health service. So this is basically just search and rescue. But like I said before, I haven't actually created the data assets for those divisions. But we're gonna be looking at the combined arms one. So again, you want to click this plus icon, and then for the row name here on the right, name it exactly the same as you named your data asset here. So once you've done that, you basically want to put in the short name of this division. So mine is just SAA. That's what I called mine. And then you want to put in the display name or the full name of whatever division it is, so South African Army, and then you can also add a description to say what is this division about. And then you also set the badge texture for the units, and then again you can set the unit banner. And then outer faction ID, make sure this is SANDF, or make sure this is your mod ID that you set in here. That's why this ID, this row name is very important. So obviously your faction will be named different, so make sure this, whatever name you put here, is exactly the same that you put in here. Otherwise you will have problems. So after you've done that, we're all done with that, unless you want to make more set up more divisions. If you want to, that's fine, but then just remember in here, make sure you need to then go and create a data asset for each of those divisions and then name them exactly the same as you named them in here. Okay, hopefully you guys are still following me and I'm not confusing you guys too much. So the next thing we'll be moving on to is the actual data asset for this division. So this is where you're basically going to set all of the roles and the vehicles that that division can use, the deployables. So the deployables is like the habs, the sandbags, every single buildable thing, the weapon crates, what else? Everything to do with the deployables, and then also the actions. So actions are, if I'm correct, this is mainly for the commander. So this basically gives the commander certain actions that they can perform. Like you like you can basically deploy a UAV, for instance, and then you can also do artillery and another artillery, and so on. So let's start on from the top. So by default, you guys won't have anything here. Again, if you guys don't know how to set up or don't know what is set here by default, you guys can always go to one of the other or one of the default faction setups from the SDK. So let's quickly open the combined arms on here. So as you can see, I basically just copied everything, but obviously I have my own custom roles set here. So that's the next thing that we'll go over after we finish this. But you can always just go into the default faction setups from the SDK, look what they have set, and then copy it if you want to. But this is all up to you. You don't have to have the exact same roles as the US faction, for instance, or the Canadian faction. You can make up your own roles, but then you have to remember to make sure you set up everything correctly, according to what roles, what deployables, what vehicles that faction is going to use, and so on and so on. So again, here you guys will see there's a faction ID. Make sure that's exactly the same as whenever you made your faction ID. And then under here by type, make sure you make this combined arms, or whatever your division is going to be. And then for roles, I basically copied the US roles thing, and then I went over all of them and set them to my custom roles. So we're gonna come back to this. So I'm just gonna skip over this for now. And then the same for the deployables. I basically copied the deployables from the US Combined Arms division, and then just pasted it in here except for the roles. And then vehicles the same. I did everything the same. And then same for the actions like you guys saw. And then down here you guys will see we have another primary data section. And then under data table, make sure this faction setup table is pointing to your faction that we just created, or the faction setup table that we just created. Once you've done that, under row name, you want to, on the drop down, you want to make sure this is set to combined arms, or whatever your division name for your faction is going to be. Make sure you have it set. Again, under rules, priority, you guys can leave this. If this apply recursively is not set, make sure it is set. And then chunk ID, again, I named mine 2143 because I want most of everything for my mod to be all in on the same chunk ID. Obviously, you guys can name this whatever. And then under here by runtime, I don't think I did anything to this. If there's nothing here, again, just go over and copy these things from the vanilla data assets from the SDK. So next up, we can quickly move on to the move on to the roles. So again, you want to move back to the default or to your settings folder, and then you want to make a new folder and call it roles. I already have one, so obviously I'm not going to create one. So quickly just create a new folder called roles, and then we're going to go into our roles folder. And again, you guys will see you need to make another new folder and call it your faction's name. Once you've done that, you want to open it, and then we're basically gonna make a role data table. So to create this one, you want to right click. Let me just make this one bigger, and then just go to miscellaneous data table, and then on here you want to search role, and you want to choose this first role entry, this one. Click OK, and name it role table underscore your faction's name. Once you've done that, you want to open it, and as you can see, it's a long list, but this is basically where you're gonna add every single role that's going to be in this specific faction. So I basically copied the US Army's role table and then renamed them according to my faction. So as you see, instead of US, mine is SNDF underscore recruit. And then each of these just have a UI icon that you can set, and then the specific weapon that role is going to have. So this is all UI related. And then display name, obviously you can call this whatever. I didn't really change any of this. And then under details, you can put whatever, and then specifics is like something if you want to put in more specific for that specific role. So that's what you basically want to do. Now you can't directly copy from the US role table into this and paste them all. You have to do it manually. So you basically gonna click the plus icon, go back to the US role table, copy the details, paste them in here, change the row name, and you do that for each one. So once you've done all of this, I know this might be like the part that's the most time consuming, but once you've done that, we can basically close our role table because we're not gonna use it anymore. And then this is the next part. So as you can see, I have a data asset for every single role that we created in this role table data table. So what I basically did is I went to the default content or the default content folder and into the settings folder of the SDK, and then I went into roles, and then I went into the US folder, and then I basically copied all of these roles that are in this folder for the US faction, and then I basically dragged them over and then copied them over, not move, just say copy. And then once you've done that, I'm not gonna do it obviously because I already did it, but once you've done that, you wanna then, after it copied everything over, you wanna go to each one, and then in the front, instead of saying US, you wanna make it your faction's name. So obviously mine is SNDF, so that's what I did for each and every one of these. So once you've done that, you basically have your roles all set up. Now you do want to go into each and every one of these and then up here where it says data table, make sure you click on this and click on your role table that we just created for your faction, and then under row name you want to select whatever this thing is named, the same as it is in the data table for the roles. So as you see, if I click the drop down, it shows every single role that's in our data table. So make sure you select the correct one according to what this is named. And then in here you can basically change a lot of stuff. What that role can have, like its inventory. You can even you can basically change what this role have in its inventory. What gun, what pistol, if you want to give it grenades, everything related to what will be in its inventory. So once you've done that, this might be also one of the parts that might take you a while, because you have to rename them all, then go into each of one of them, set the row table here, and then select the specific name that the data asset is you're editing. So once you've done that, and hopefully you guys are not too confused by now, then we can actually go back to our settings folder, go into our faction setups, go in here, and then open our combined arms. Mine is already opened, whatever your division is named. And then under roles, I'm going to expand all of them. Now, if you basically copied the US faction the same as I did, this should be exactly the same. This should be yours should then be exactly the same as mine, except for obviously your role names would be different, because of your faction's name. Your faction's name will be different from what mine is called. But what you want to do is up here by default role, make sure you set this to rifle 1, to your faction's role that you just created and set up. And then the default squad leader role, again, you set this to your faction's squad leader role. Same for the recruit. And then on the role 0, this is going to be the recruit one. You don't have to set any of these. You just set this first setting. So the first one is going to be recruit. The second one is going to be squad lead 1. The third one is going to be squad lead 2. The fourth one is going to be squad lead 3. The fifth one is going to be crewman 1. The sixth one is going to be squad lead pilot 1. The seventh one is going to be medic. The eighth one is going to be medic 2. The ninth role is going to be rifleman 1. Rifleman 2 is going to be the next one. Rifleman 3. And then AR 1. AR 2. Grenadier. Light anti-tank. Light anti-tank 2. Marksman. Machine gunner. Heavy anti-tank. Heavy anti-tank 2. Engineer. Crewman. Pilot. Unarmed. And then you're done. So obviously, depending on if you totally have your own custom roles that you want to make, obviously this list will be shorter, and then you just have to adapt everything else according to how many roles you have. Okay, so with that said, that's about everything that you need to do to have your now custom faction that you created. Your faction setup should be set up and all correct, and then all of your roles should also be all set up. Now, the other thing that you need to do is, if you have your map, you want to go to your maps folder, go into your map, whatever it's called, go into your gameplay layer data, if I'm not correct. Yes. Okay, so you want to basically go into your maps folder, go into gameplay layer data, and you want to open your gameplay layer data asset. If you don't know how to, if you guys haven't watched my previous video where I showed you guys how to create a squad map, I would suggest you go watch that if you don't have this already. So you know what I'm talking about. So then you want to open your gameplay layer data asset file, and then in here you want to scroll down where it says factions, and then as you can see, here I have most, or you just can look at how I have mine set up, and then by specific faction setup, as you can see, mine is pointing to my combined arms army division that we just created, or whatever your is called. You want to select that, but by default you guys will probably have to search for it, so just search whatever your faction's name is underscore a combined arms, or whatever your division name is, and then you select that. And then this is also where you select the amount of tickets that each team has. Oops, I accidentally changed it. So by default, mine is just 150. And then obviously for the other team, this is where you can then choose another faction if you want to. I just chose Russia, or the Russian faction. And obviously, if you have another custom faction, you basically just, or if you want to have another custom faction, you basically go through the whole process again of everything that I showed you guys in this video so far, and then you just select your other second faction here, or you just use one of the default ones. It all depends on you. So hopefully by this point you guys were able to follow the tutorial good enough and you have all of your stuff set up. Now once you've done that, you're all set. Your faction will now, or it should work on your map. Now obviously I'll make another video in the future showing how to place down vehicles and stuff that spawn in your base at first for each team or for your faction. And then I'll go over the other deployables and stuff in a future video. But with that said, then you can go and click on the play button. Now the first time you click play, it most likely will take a while because it usually loads a lot of stuff and compiles things in the background. And so here you can see, obviously I didn't change the background and also didn't change the divisions icon. But here you guys will see it says South African National Defense Force and then South African Army, and then if I click continue, up here you guys will see again it shows South African Army. And then obviously if I changed all of the textures for the faction, it won't show the US flags and stuff, but I didn't go through and change that yet. But then you can just create a squad. You can go to role loadout, and here you can see here you have all of your loadouts. So this is what these those categories was that I showed you guys, I think in the beginning of the video. So that is what those are for. So obviously I'm just going to choose the squad lead one, and then I can choose a different gun. Click select spawn, and you click on your spawn, and then there you guys go. You basically have a working faction, and you have your own custom roles also. Obviously I didn't go through the process and renaming it to my own names for the roles, but you guys can do that if you want to. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up, and also remember to subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. We're also so close to 800 subscribers. We're 50 subscribers away. I would really like to get to 1,000 subscribers this year. This is still one of my goals, is to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you guys are not subscribed, please subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. And also if you click that like button, that means you guys are enjoying these tutorials, and then you're helping me to grow this channel. So with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.